Did you really think? Did you really think the dress was all I was? That's the question that screamed in my head, but I didn't say it. I didn't have to. They laughed at the Nigerian girl's shabby dress. Oh yes, they laughed. It wasn't quiet laughter either. It was the loud, confident, barking laugh of the very rich. The kind of laugh that says, "You do not belong here and we all know it." It echoed off the marble floors and the ridiculously high ceilings of the hall. It felt like tiny, sharp needles. They pointed. They whispered. They smirked. The woman in the front row, wearing a diamond necklace that could have paid for my entire village's water supply, literally turned to her husband and shielded her eyes, as if the sight of my dress, my Ankara dress, the one my mother had spent a month saving for, the one I'd sewn myself, was physically painful to her. And then I stepped up to the piano. My fingers hovered over the keys. A gleaming, black, 9-foot concert grand. A piano that cost more than the house I grew up in. The silence that fell then was different. It wasn't respectful. It was curious. The way you'd be curious about a dog that was about to try and ride a bicycle. They were expecting a joke. They were expecting failure. They were expecting me to play chopsticks and stumble off the stage in tears. I'd spent my whole life being invisible, being the charity case, being the poor relation. I'd spent the last year being systematically destroyed by the one person I thought was my friend. I never knew that this single moment, this one performance, would be the only thing that mattered. It's funny how life works, isn't it? People build these tiny, perfect boxes for you. Poor, foreign, shabby, quiet. They lock you in those boxes in their minds because it makes them feel safe. It makes them feel superior. But they never, ever think to check what you might be hiding inside that box with you. They never expect that you might be the one holding the key. How are you all doing today? I really hope you're somewhere comfortable, maybe with a good cup of tea or coffee. Where are you watching this from? Is it warm where you are? Is it cold and rainy? I genuinely hope the story finds you well. Because this is a story about finding your key. And I promise you, by the time we're done, you're going to feel this one. It's a story you won't just watch. You'll feel it right here in your chest. My name is Amara Okeke. And this is the story of how I went from being the invisible, laughed-at girl in a borrowed dress to the person who silenced the most powerful, arrogant room in all of Lagos. This moment, me sitting at that gleaming black piano, with every single jaw on the floor and the air sucked out of the room, this wasn't an accident. It was a war. This one, it's a lot. It's my life. And I would be so grateful if you would come along with me for this. So please, if you enjoy this, click that like button, and definitely subscribe if you haven't. And please ring that bell, because the twists in this journey, you won't want to miss a single one. But let me start from the beginning. Before the piano, before the laughter, before her. It all started 3 years ago. I was 22. I just moved to Lagos from Nsukka. I had a degree in business administration, which I'd earned on a full scholarship. I came to the city with one good suitcase, a small bag of Gary, and a burning, desperate hope. I believed what all young people believe, that if you work hard, if you are good and honest, you will succeed. I believed that people were fundamentally decent. I believed that talent, true talent, would always find a way. I was so naive. It's almost painful to look back on it. I was trusting. I gave everything I had to the wrong people. I genuinely thought she was my friend, my mentor, my flaw. It wasn't just being naive. It was that I was starving. Not for food, but for acceptance. I wanted to be seen. More than anything. I'd spent my entire life being the scholarship girl, the poor relation my Lagos cousins had to host for holidays. I just wanted one person, one important person, to look at me and see me. Not the worn-out shoes, not the second-hand clothes. Just Amara. This desire, this ache for validation, is what made me so blind. It's what she used against me. I should have known from the very first day I met Beatrice Adebayo. I got the internship at her mother's prestigious art gallery, the gallery in Victoria Island. Adebayo Gallery. It was like getting an internship at the center of the universe. I was intimidated, starstruck. On my first day, I woke up at 4 a.m. to make akara, bean cakes, as a humble thank you gift for the opportunity. I wrapped them neatly and presented them to her. Beatrice looked at the small, warm package. She smiled, but it didn't touch her eyes. "Oh," she said, her voice smooth as glass. "How rustic. You can leave it with the security guard. He might enjoy it." She then turned to her assistant and ordered a N40,000 breakfast delivery from some high-end cafe. I felt my face burn, but I ignored it. I shoved the feeling down. I told myself it was just how rich people were. I didn't see it for what it was, a warning. You can probably see it already, can't you? The rich, polished, beautiful girl with the perfect life and the naive, poor girl who just wants to be friends. It's a cliché for a reason. You know she's going to betray me. But I didn't. I thought she was my mentor, my confidant. She praised my work. She took me to fancy lunches and made sure I knew she was paying. She'd give me her old designer bags, saying she was clearing out her closet. I felt so grateful. I felt seen. The ticking clock was the gallery's annual Patrons Gala. It was in 3 months. This wasn't just a party. It was the event of the Lagos social calendar. Diplomats, billionaires, old money families, anyone was there. It was the night the gallery unveiled its biggest new artist. Beatrice told me that if I did a good job, really impressed her and her mother, she would find a way for me to attend. Not as staff, clocking in and out. As a guest. The idea consumed me. Me. Amara Okeke. A guest. 3 months. That was my deadline to prove I belonged in their world. But here's the thing that recontextualizes everything. The piece of the puzzle I was too stupid to see. The thing I didn't know until it was far, far too late. The gala wasn't just a party. It was an audition. Beatrice's mother, the formidable Mrs. Adebayo, was stepping down. And she was looking for a replacement to run the gallery. She wasn't just looking at her daughter, Beatrice. She was looking at me. And Beatrice knew it. She wasn't my friend. She wasn't my mentor. She was my rival. And she wasn't just planning to win. She was planning to annihilate me. I threw myself into the work for the gala. I wasn't just an intern. I was working like a co-director. I worked 16-hour days. I reorganized the entire gallery archive system, a task that 3 previous employees had quit over. I did it in 2 weeks. I wasn't just sorting files. I was learning. I memorized every artist, every piece, every sale price. I learned the preferences of their top-tier clients. I knew who liked abstracts, who collected sculptures, who had a secret love for brutalist art. Beatrice was intoxicating. She brought me into her world in small, calculated doses. She'd take me to exclusive clubs where the drinks cost more than my weekly food budget. "Don't worry about it, Amara," she'd say, waving her platinum card. "This is how we live." She'd introduce me to her friends, a circle of glittering, sharp-edged people who all looked through me. "This is Amara," she'd announce. "She's my little project. Isn't she brilliant?" I hated being called a project, but I swallowed it. I swallowed it because being her project meant I was seen. She'd ask my opinion on new artists. "What do you think of this one?" she'd ask, showing me a portfolio. And I, with my rustic background, would see things she missed. I saw the brush strokes inspired by traditional uli patterns. I saw the composition influenced by old Nollywood film posters. She'd look at me, her eyes wide with fake surprise. "My goodness, you're right. I never would have seen that. You have such a raw eye." Raw. That was her word for me. Uncooked, unrefined, but useful. My vulnerability was my gratitude. I was so grateful for the crumbs she threw me that I never stopped to ask why she was throwing them. I'd do anything for her. I'd rewrite her proposals. I'd stay late to finish her reports. I'd even pick up her dry cleaning. I told myself this was paying my dues. There was someone who tried to warn me. Chitty. He was the gallery's registrar, a quiet, older man who'd been with Mrs. Adebayo since the beginning. He was kind to me in a way that didn't feel like a transaction. He'd share his lunch with me when he saw I was skipping meals to save money. One afternoon, after I'd stayed up all night to salvage a presentation Beatrice had completely botched, Chitty found me asleep at my desk. He put a hand on my shoulder. "Amara," he said, his voice low, "you're a good girl. You work very hard." "Thank you, Mr. Chitty," I said, rubbing my eyes. "I just want to help Beatrice make the gala a success." He shook his head slowly. "Beatrice, She is not like her mother. Mrs. Adebayo built this place with her hands. Beatrice only knows how to inherit. Be careful. The person who smiles the most in this place is often the one holding the longest knife. I felt a prickle of discomfort, but I pushed it away. He was just old-fashioned, I thought. He didn't understand our friendship. Oh, Beatrice is wonderful, I insisted. She's teaching me so much. Chitty just looked at me with sad eyes. She is teaching you, yes. But you must ask yourself what she is teaching you. I dismissed it. I was loyal. That was another one of my flaws. The gala centerpiece was supposed to be a new collection by a famous international artist. 2 months before the event, he pulled out. A family emergency. The gallery was in a full-blown panic. This was the main draw. Beatrice was hysterical, not because the art was gone, but because she would look like a failure. "We're ruined," she wailed, throwing a catalog across her office. "Mother will kill me." "What if," I said, my voice shaking, "we change the focus? Instead of one big international name, we make it about the new wave. The new generation of Lagos artists. We could discover someone." Beatrice scoffed. "Discover? Amara, we don't have time for discovery. We need a name." "I know someone," I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. I'd been visiting the local art markets on my Sundays off. I'd met a young man, Emeka, who made these incredible, haunting sculptures from scrap metal, old engine parts, rebar, bottle caps. They were beautiful. They were powerful. They were Lagos. His name is Emeka. His work it's breathtaking. Beatrice rolled her eyes. "Scrap metal? Amara, this is a gala, not a junkyard. Please," I begged. Just let me bring him in. Let me show you." She finally agreed, annoyed, just to shut me up. I found Emeka. I convinced him to bring his best pieces. I used my own tiny savings to rent a van. I set them up in the main gallery myself, arranging the lighting just right. When Beatrice and her mother, the formidable Mrs. Adebayo, walked in, the room went silent. Mrs. Adebayo, a woman who never, ever showed emotion, walked right up to a towering sculpture of a market woman, her face a constellation of welded nuts and bolts. She reached out and touched his metal hand. "Who found this?" Mrs. Adebayo asked, her voice sharp. I opened my mouth, beaming. This was it. This was my moment. "I did, Mother," Beatrice said, stepping right in front of me. Her voice was smooth, confident. "I've been scouting him for months. It was a personal project. I wasn't sure he was ready, but I took the risk. His name is Emeka, my new discovery." I felt the blood drain from my face. It was like I'd been slapped. I looked at Beatrice, my eyes wide. She wouldn't look at me. She was smiling at her mother, soaking in the rare, warm look of approval. "Beatrice," Mrs. Adebayo said, and her voice was thick with pride. This is brilliant. You have your father's eye. This will be the talk of the town. Well done." I stood there, invisible. My discovery. My work. My idea. She had taken it. Just taken it. Like picking a flower from a garden she didn't plant. Later that day, she found me in the archive room. I was crying silently, trying to hide. "Amara," she said, her voice soft. I flinched. You said you found him," I whispered. She sighed, sitting on the stool next to me. She put her arm around me. It felt cold. "Oh, Amara, you are so new to this. You have to understand how this world works. The gallery has to look strong. United. Beatrice Adebayo discovers new talent. That's a story. That's branding. Amara the intern discovers new talent. What does that even mean? It sounds messy. Unprofessional." She tilted my chin up, forcing me to look at her. "Listen to me. This is our success. We did this. And because of this, the gala will be a huge hit. And when I take over, you will be right there with me. I'm grooming you, Amara. Don't you see? I need you to be tough. I need you to see the bigger picture." She was right, wasn't she? I was just an intern. It was messy. She was the face of the gallery. I was nobody. I let her words wash over me. I let her logic soothe the sting. It was for the gallery. It was for us. "Okay," I whispered, wiping my tears. "I understand. For the gallery." "Good girl," she smiled, patting my shoulder. Now, I need you to run the background checks and draft the contracts for Emeka. And I need you to find a way to get all his pieces moved here by Tuesday. Use the gallery's account for the transport this time." I nodded, and just like that, I was her loyal servant again. I had been betrayed, and I had thanked her for it. I had handed her the knife she would use to stab me, and I'd even sharpened it for her. I was so focused on the gala, on proving my worth to her, that I didn't realize I had already proved my worth to the one person who actually mattered, and in doing so, I had signed my own death warrant. The success of Emeka's art turned the entire atmosphere of the gallery electric, and it changed something in Mrs. Adebayo. She started watching me. Before, I was just part of the office furniture. Now, she would stop by my desk. She didn't talk to Beatrice. She'd ask me directly, "Amara, what are the latest pre-sale figures on Emeka's Market Woman? Amara, what's your opinion on the lighting for the main hall?" I would answer, my voice clear and confident. I had done the work. I knew the numbers. I knew the art. And with every correct answer, I could see Beatrice's smile get a little tighter, a little thinner. I could feel her watching me from her glass-walled office. It was a cold, calculating stare. I was no longer her little project. I was her competition. But I was still naive. I thought if I just kept working hard, she would have to respect me. Then, the catastrophe. It happened 10 days before the gala. The main entertainment, a ridiculously expensive and famous classical pianist from Germany, had cancelled. His management sent a curt email, a scheduling conflict. Beatrice flew into a rage. This was worse than the artist pulling out. The music was the classy part of the evening. It was the part her high society friends cared about. "We're finished!" she screamed, throwing her phone against the wall. "Mother will never forgive me for this. We'll be a laughingstock." The staff was frantic. Calls were being made. Every other high-profile musician was either booked or outrageously expensive. The budget was gone. We were in a tiny conference room, the air thick with panic. My heart was hammering. I had a secret I never told anyone at the gallery. It wasn't relevant to business administration. It was mine. It was the one thing from my old life that I hadn't packed in my suitcase. I can play," I said. The room went silent. Beatrice turned to me, her eyes red from crying. She let out a short, sharp laugh. "What did you say?" "I play the piano," I said, stronger this time. "I trained for 15 years. I was supposed to go to a conservatory in London, but we couldn't afford it." "You," Beatrice said, her voice dripping with disbelief. "You play what?" "Church hymns. Twinkle, twinkle, little star." I felt the familiar heat rise in my face. Before I could answer, Mrs. Adebayo's voice cut through the room. She had been standing in the doorway, silent. "There is a piano in my office, Amara," she said. It wasn't a question. "Show me." Beatrice's face went white. "Mother, don't be ridiculous. We can't have an intern performing at the patron's gala. It's absurd." "I will be the judge of that," Mrs. Adebayo said, her eyes fixed on me. "Now." My legs felt like they were moving through wet cement. The entire staff followed us to Mrs. Adebayo's palatial office. In the corner sat a beautiful, dark wood baby grand piano. It was covered in a thin layer of dust. "Play," she commanded. I sat down. My hands were shaking. I could feel Beatrice's stare burning into my back. I took a deep breath. I closed my eyes. And I thought of home. I thought of my first teacher, an old woman in Sukka who taught me on a broken-down keyboard. I thought of all the years I practiced until my fingers bled, all the dreams I'd had to lock away. And then I played. I didn't play Mozart. I didn't play Beethoven. I played Fela Soun's Obanjiji. It's a Nigerian piece, full of deep, rolling chords, complex rhythms, and a melody that just breaks your heart. It's a piece of music that sounds like home. It's a piece of music that I understood. The sound filled the room, rich and powerful. I lost myself in it. For those 5 minutes, I wasn't the intern. I wasn't the poor relation. I was just me. When I finished, the silence was absolute. I opened my eyes. Chitty, the registrar, was standing by the door, and he was wiping a tear from his eye. Mrs. Adebayo was standing perfectly still. She looked stunned. She just stared at me, not as an employee but as an equal. "Well," she said, her voice quiet. "It seems we have found our performer." Beatrice looked like she had been struck by lightning. Her face was a mask of pure, unadulterated fury. She had been upstaged. Again. And this time, it was with a talent so pure, so undeniable, she couldn't possibly steal it. She couldn't pretend she had been practicing piano in secret for 15 years. This was the moment, the point of no return. I had just saved her gala, but I had also, finally and completely, eclipsed her in front of her mother. The next day, Beatrice was a new person. She came to my desk, her smile brighter than ever. "Amara," she chirped. I am just speechless. You were incredible. A true prodigy. I was so stressed yesterday, I didn't even congratulate you." She pulled me into a hug. It felt like hugging a block of ice. "Mother is right. This is your moment, and I am going to make sure it is perfect." This was the promise that hooked me. "Amara," she said, holding my hands, her eyes sparkling. "You are the star. You cannot be worried about details. I will handle everything. The press release, the lighting, the everything." She squeezed my hands. "And the dress. Oh, Amara, the dress. I am going to get you a custom-made designer gown. You will look like a queen. You trust me. Okay. We are in this together. This is our triumph." I gave her everything. I gave her all my trust. Again. I was so high on the validation, so desperate for this one perfect night, that I couldn't see the trap being laid. "I trust you, Beatrice," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Thank you. Thank you so much." "Of course," she smiled. "We're friends." The deception began immediately, but I didn't see it. She did handle everything. She buried me in gala preparations that were really just endless, menial errands. "Amara, I need you to go to the printers in Suralere. The invitation color is just a shade off. Only your eye is good enough to approve it." It was a 3-hour trip in traffic. "Amara, I need you to supervise the installation of the bar. All day." She was keeping me busy. She was keeping me away from the gallery and away from the piano. Emeka, the artist, saw it. He'd found me one evening, sorting through hundreds of name tags, my eyes burning with exhaustion. "She is running you ragged, Amara," he said, his voice a low rumble. "Why do you let her do this? You should be practicing." "She's just stressed, Emeka." I defended her, rubbing my temples. "The gala is a huge deal. And she's doing so much for me. She's getting me a designer dress." Emeka shook his head, his face full of a pity I didn't understand. "She is not doing things for you, Amara. She is doing things to you. Open your eyes. She doesn't want you on that stage." I got angry. "You don't know her. She's my friend." He backed off, but the look in his eyes, it stayed with me. The stakes got higher. I called my mother back in Succa. I told her I wasn't just working at the gala, I was performing in it. On a grand piano. In front of billionaires. The joy in her voice. She screamed. She ululated. She prayed for me right there on the phone. A week later, a small, wrinkled envelope arrived for me. Inside was 30,000 naira. It was all her savings. "For good shoes, my daughter," the note read, in my father's shaky handwriting. "So you can walk on that stage like the queen you are." I cried when I saw it. It was everything. Now I couldn't just succeed. I had to. I couldn't let my family down. The night before the gala, Beatrice came to me. "It's here," she sang, holding a large, flat garment bag. "Your dress. It's very you." I wanted to open it. "No," she squealed, pulling it away. "Bad luck. You'll see it tomorrow." She was right. It was perfect. A perfect weapon. I was so blinded by the promise of the stage, so grateful for her friendship, so exhausted from her errands, and so desperate to make my family proud, that I never saw the evidence right in front of my face. I never saw the way her smile never reached her eyes. I never saw the cold satisfaction in her face every time I said, "Yes, Beatrice." I had given her my art, my labor, and now my music. I had handed her my entire life, and she was about to set it all on fire. I woke up the morning of the gala at 5 a.m., not from excitement, but from a bolt of pure, cold panic. My body was vibrating with exhaustion. I'd been running Beatrice's emergencies for a week straight. My fingers felt stiff. I hadn't sat at a piano in 5 days. 5 days. Before a performance that could change my life. I looked at the small, wrinkled envelope on my bedside table. My mother's 30,000 naira. My anchor. I got up, washed my face, and dressed in my most nondescript clothes. I had one mission before the gallery opened. I went to the market at Balagan. I walked past the stalls selling shoes for 5,000 naira. I kept walking until I found a small, quiet shop. I bought a pair of simple, elegant, black court shoes. They were not designer. They were not flashy. But they were good leather. They cost 29,500 naira. I bought them. I had 500 naira left. I held the box close to my chest. It felt like armor. I got to the gallery at 8 a.m., clutching my shoebox. I was going to go straight to Mrs. Adebayo's office, lock the door, and practice for 3 solid hours. My phone rang. It was Beatrice. Her voice was high and tight. Amara! Thank goodness. A complete and total catastrophe. My heart sank. What is it, Beatrice? The champagne, she practically shrieked. They've set moat. Mother specifically ordered Veuve Clicquot. She is having an absolute meltdown. She says it will ruin the flavor profile of the evening. I can't leave. The florists are here. You have to fix it. You're the only one I can trust. Beatrice, I said, my voice shaking. I can't. I need to practice. The performance is tonight. I haven't. Amara, please. She cut me off. Her voice dropped, suddenly sounding like a wounded bird. I am so overwhelmed. I'm barely holding it together. If this champagne thing goes wrong, Mother will take it out on both of us. This is our night. It has to be perfect. You understand, don't you? Please. For us. I looked at the door to Mrs. Adebayo's office. I looked at my phone. I was trapped. Trapped by her friendship. Trapped by my own loyalty. Where is the distributor? I asked, my voice dead. Ikeja, she said, rattling off an address. The driver is waiting for you downstairs. You're a lifesaver, Amara. I'll make it up to you, I promise. Ikeja. In morning traffic. That was a 4-hour round trip, minimum. As I walked towards the exit, my new shoes in their box, Mr. Chitty stepped out from the archive room. He blocked my path. His face was grim. Ikeja? Today, he asked quietly. I nodded, my eyes stinging. The champagne. It's the wrong brand. Chitty looked at me, and his gaze was so full of pity it made me sick. Amara, he said, his voice barely a whisper. Mrs. Adebayo drank moat at last year's gala. It's her favorite. She wouldn't know the difference anyway. She is not a flavor profile person. I stared at him. What do you mean? I mean, he said, stepping closer, that Beatrice has been lying to you. About everything. She has been running you into the ground on purpose. He took a deep breath. She told me you were not to be disturbed. Then she took the key to Mrs. Adebayo's office. The piano is locked, Amara. She said it was for a final tuning. The tuner came and left 2 days ago. The shoebox in my hands suddenly felt impossibly heavy. Locked! She does not want you to practice, Chitty said, his words hitting me like stones. She does not want you to succeed. She is afraid of you. She is afraid of what her mother sees in you. I couldn't breathe. It was too much. The errands. The fake praise. The locked piano. It was all a lie. A calculated, cruel lie. But what could I do? I was the intern. She was the boss. If I refused, she would have me fired. I'd be humiliated. I wouldn't perform. She would win. I have to go, I whispered, pushing past him. I couldn't look at his face. I couldn't accept the truth. Not yet. The trip to Acadia was a nightmare. The traffic was a solid, unmoving block of cars and fumes. When I finally got to the distributor, the man at the desk looked at me in complete confusion. What do you mean? He said. The Adebayo order? It's Veuve Clicquot. It's always Veuve Clicquot. It was delivered 3 hours ago. Miss Adebayo signed for it herself. My blood ran cold. She had sent me on a ghost chase. A complete fabrication to waste my entire day. I sat in the back of the car on the way back, my hands trembling. I was in a cage she had built for me, and I had walked right into it, over and over again. I got back to the gallery at 4:15 p.m. The gala started at 7. The foyer was already transformed, filled with flowers and low, glowing lights. Staff were bustling everywhere. I ran to my desk. I was frantic. I needed to get to the piano. I needed to get ready. Emeka found me. He wasn't smiling. He looked furious. "Have you seen this?" he said, holding out his phone. It was a popular Lagos society blog. The headline was Beatrice Adebayo's Moment of Triumph. I scrolled. The article was long, fawning. It was all about Beatrice. How she had single-handedly saved the gala. How she had the courage to pivot to new artists. How she had discovered Emeka, this raw, undiscovered talent. And then I saw it. The last paragraph. And in a move of humble genius, Miss Adebayo will also be showcasing one of her own protégés, a talented young intern from the countryside, who she has personally mentored. As a final, charming touch, this young woman will play a short, traditional piece on the piano. A lovely, rustic end to an evening of high sophistication. I read the words again. A talented young intern. Countryside. Personally mentored. A short, traditional piece. Rustic. She had demoted me. She had erased me. I wasn't the star performer. I was a charming touch. A rustic end. I was the performing monkey. She's telling everyone I'm the intermission. I whispered, the phone shaking in my hand. "She is not just stealing your work, Amara," Emeka said, his voice tight with anger. "She is stealing your name. She is framing your triumph as her act of charity." This was it, the full scope of her deception. She wasn't just my rival. She hated me. She wanted to destroy me. She wanted me to fail, but she wanted to do it publicly. She wanted me to be the poor girl who tried and couldn't cut it. Just then, Beatrice glided up, already in a stunning, floor-length red gown. She looked like a goddess. She beamed at me. "Amara, there you are. You're a lifesaver. The champagne is perfect, you see. All that panic for nothing. Mother is thrilled." I just stared at her. The lie was so easy, so effortless. "Amara, are you all right? You look pale," she said, her head tilting in fake concern. "The piano," I choked out. "It was locked." "What?" She put a hand to her chest, her eyes wide with perfected shock. "Oh no. Those idiots on the staff. I told them you needed it. I am so sorry. Don't you worry one bit. It's open now, I'm sure. But honestly, there's no time. You must get ready. People are arriving in an hour." She pressed the large, flat garment bag into my hands. The one she'd been holding. "Here. Your dress. It's just perfect. I'm so excited for you. Now hurry. Go to the staff changing room and put it on. I have to go greet the senator." She pushed me toward the hallway. Go. It's our big night." The staff changing room. Not a guest suite. Not even an empty office. The staff changing room, in the basement, next to the kitchens. I stumbled down the stairs, the sound of the real musicians, a string quartet, starting to tune up in the main hall. The smell of high-end catering wafted through the door. I was in a small, windowless, fluorescent-lit room. It smelled like bleach and anxiety. I was shaking so hard I could barely stand. I clutched the garment bag. It felt thin. Too thin. I laid it on a bench. My heart was a drum. She wouldn't. She couldn't. I took a deep breath. I unzipped the bag. The smell hit me first. Cheap dye and old fabric. I pulled it out. It wasn't a designer gown. It wasn't anything. It was a dress. A cheap, machine-made, faded Ankara print dress. The kind of thing you'd see on a stall in a motor park for 2,000 naira. The seams were crooked. The fit was shapeless. It was a rag. It was a rustic costume for her charming, traditional performance. My legs gave out. I sank onto the bench. Taped to the dress was a small, embossed note card, the same kind Beatrice used for everything. Her perfect, loopy handwriting read, "Amara darling, I thought you'd be more comfortable in something that feels like home. This is so much more you. A perfect match for your traditional piece. Break a leg. B." It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a mix-up. It was a message. It was a weapon. You are my servant. You are poor. You are a joke. And tonight, I will make the whole world laugh at you. I was trapped. It was 6:45 p.m. The most important people in Lagos were upstairs. I was in a basement, holding this insult. I had no other clothes. I hadn't practiced. Everyone was waiting for the rustic girl to play her little piece. I just sat there. I stared at the dress. The cheap, garish fabric. The ugly, crooked seams. The smell of contempt. This was the custom-made designer gown. This was the reward for my work. For my talent. For saving her gala. This was the physical manifestation of what she thought of me. Rustic. Countryside. Charity case. I didn't cry. I was beyond tears. I was in a state of cold, hollow shock. Every single kindness she had ever shown me replayed in my mind, but now I saw them for what they were. The lunches where she paid, making me feel small. The old designer bags, marking me as her recipient of charity. The praise, which was just her sharpening the knife. I'm grooming you, Amara. She was grooming me, like an animal for slaughter. All the pressure of the last few months, the 16-hour days, the hope, the fear, the desperation to make my family proud, it all crashed down on me. I was a fool. A complete, trusting, naive fool. I felt erased. She had stolen my work, stolen my music, and now she had stolen my dignity. She wasn't just going to let me fail. She was orchestrating my public execution. She was going to put me on that stage in this costume, so everyone could laugh. The little project from the village, trying to play with the big kids. I looked at the box with my new shoes. The 29,500 naira shoes. My mother's savings. So you can walk on that stage like the queen you are. A dry, rag sob escaped my throat. I couldn't even do that. My phone buzzed on the bench. A text from Beatrice. Show starts in 15. Everyone is asking about you. Smiley face. The smiley face. It felt like a threat. I was trapped. I had two options. I could run. I could walk out the back door, past the kitchens, and just disappear into the Lagos night. I could go back to my tiny room, pack my suitcase, and go back to sucker and shame. I would be a failure. My family would be heartbroken. Beatrice would win. She would tell everyone the rustic girl got stage fright and ran away. She would be the victim of my unprofessionalism. Or I could go out there. I could go on that stage in that hideous dress, the one she'd picked to humiliate me. I could let them laugh. I couldn't move. I was paralyzed. My whole life, my whole future, had just been destroyed. By a fake friend and a cheap piece of fabric. The door to the basement hallway opened. I heard voices. They were sharp, clear, echoing off the concrete walls. I froze. It was Beatrice. And her mother. They were standing just outside the changing room, by the service elevator. They couldn't see me. They thought they were alone. Absolutely brilliant, Beatrice, Mrs. Adebayo was saying. Her voice was impressed. Cruel, but brilliant. I wasn't sure you had it in you. I stopped breathing. My blood turned to ice water. Beatrice laughed. It wasn't her light, chirpy laugh. It was a low, throaty sound, full of genuine malice. Please, Mother. Did you really think I'd let that rat, upstage me at my own gala? After she stole Emeka's discovery from me? She stole from me? The lie was so profound, so complete, I felt my stomach heave. She was getting ideas, Beatrice continued, her voice like venom. Did you see her? The way she started talking to your clients? The way you started looking at her? You were going to give her my job, weren't you? There was a long, cold pause. The girl is talented, Beatrice, Mrs. Adebayo said, her voice noncommittal. Talent is currency. You should know that. Talent is nothing without power, Beatrice snapped. And I have the power. She has that. A 2,000 naira dress I had the driver buy in Oshodi Market. I even had him rub it in the dirt a little. A perfect match for her traditional piece. By the time she's done, everyone will see her exactly as I do. A charity case. A charming little village girl who got in over her head. They won't see talent. They'll just feel pity. And I will be the gracious, kind mentor who gave her a chance. You'll never look at her again. No one will. This was the moment. The final, devastating revelation. This wasn't just jealousy. This was a premeditated, calculated, sociopathic plan. The errands. The locked piano. The fake champagne crisis. The blog post, the dress. It was all one long, continuous act of psychological warfare. She hadn't just sabotaged me. She had written a script for my humiliation. And her mother knew. Her mother was impressed. A new feeling started to burn in my chest, rising up from the pit of my stomach. It was hot and sharp, and it burned away the shock. It burned away the despair. It burned away the fear. It was rage. A pure, cold, clarifying rage. She thought she had written my story. She thought she was the director. She thought she had erased me. I looked down at the ugly dress. I looked at the shoebox. They laughed at the Nigerian girl's shabby dress. That was the headline they wanted. I stood up. My hands were perfectly steady now. I was done being the victim. I was done being the little project. She wanted a show. I was going to give her a show. She's a clever girl, Beatrice, Mrs. Adebayo said, her voice fading as they moved toward the elevator. Are you sure she'll even go on stage? Oh, she will, Beatrice's voice floated back. She's too poor and too desperate not to. The elevator doors pinged shut. I was alone again in the bleach-scented room. But I wasn't the same person who had walked in. The naive, trusting Amara was gone. She had been murdered in this basement. I unbuttoned my own simple, clean blouse. I unzipped my skirt. I picked up the 2,000 naira Ankara rag. And I put it on. It was hideous. It was too big in the waist, too tight in the chest. The colors were loud and cheap. It was, as she'd intended, a joke. I sat on the bench. I opened the shoebox. I took out my 29,500 naira shoes. My mother's shoes. I slipped them on. They fit perfectly. They were elegant. They were strong. They were the only part of me that wasn't a costume. I stood up. I looked at my reflection in a cracked mirror on the wall. A girl in a joke dress and queen's shoes. She thought she'd left me in a cage. She didn't realize she'd left me with a weapon. She thought she was humiliating me. She didn't realize she was arming me. She had given me the one thing I didn't have before. A story. I walked out of the basement. The door shut behind me with a heavy thud, sealing me off from my old life. The smell of bleach and failure was replaced by the overwhelming, cloying scent of imported lilies and expensive perfume. The sound of the string quartet, playing something light and European, drifted down the hallway. It sounded thin, weak. I walked up the service stairs, my new shoes, my mother's shoes, making a sharp, determined click-clack on the concrete. Click-clack, click-clack. It was the only sound in the world. I pushed open the door to the main hall. It was blinding. Hundreds of people. A sea of black tuxedos, glittering gowns, and diamonds that refracted the light. The room was buzzing with the low, confident hum of old money and new power. At the front of the room, on a small, elevated stage, Beatrice was standing at a brightly lit podium. She was radiant in her red dress. She was laughing, sharing a joke with the front row. She was everything I was not. The string quartet finished their piece. A polite, scattered applause. Beatrice tapped the microphone. A high-pitched squeal, and then silence. Thank you, she said, her voice like honeyed silk, amplified throughout the hall. Thank you all for coming. It means the world to my mother and me, to the gallery, that you're here to celebrate this new wave of Lagos art. She beamed. They beamed back. As you know, she continued, we had a last-minute cancellation. A tragedy. But sometimes tragedy is just an opportunity for something new. For something authentic. She put her hand over her heart. Tonight, I wanted to do something special. Something personal. I was standing at the back of the hall, in the shadows, by the main entrance. No one had seen me yet. In this gallery, we believe in nurturing new talent, in giving a voice to the voiceless. Her eyes scanned a room, looking for me. Tonight, I want to introduce you to a young woman who is very, very dear to my heart. My little protégée, Amara Okeke. Her voice was full of false emotion. It was disgusting. Amara comes to us from Nsukka, from the countryside, and she has brought with her all the passion of her home. She is a perfect example of the raw talent we at Adebayo Gallery are committed to developing. Tonight, she is going to share a short, traditional piece with us. A little piece of her home for all of you. She gestured to the side. Amara, where is she? Amara, come on up. A spotlight operator, probably following her instructions, found me. A high, bright white circle of light hit me, pinning me against the back wall. And the buzzing in the room stopped. It was a complete, total, vacuum-like silence. I saw hundreds of faces turn, hundreds of pairs of eyes. They looked confused. And then the whisper started. They traveled across the room like a snake moving through dry grass. What is she wearing? Is that part of the show? My God, look at that dress. It's awful. Is she one of the staff? I took my first step. Click-clack on the marble floor. Then it came. The first laugh. It was a man in the front row. He was wearing a white dinner jacket. He didn't cover his mouth. It was a loud, barking sound. He turned to the woman next to him, the one with the diamond necklace. She brought a hand to her mouth, her shoulders shaking. And just like that, the dam broke. It wasn't everyone, but it was enough. It was a wave of titters, snorts, and open, confident laughter. They laughed at the Nigerian girl's shabby dress. The dress Beatrice had chosen. The dress Beatrice had rubbed in dirt. This was it. This was the moment she had engineered. This was my public execution. My face was on fire. I felt the blood drain from my head. I wanted to faint. I wanted to turn and run. I could feel the cheap, sweaty fabric of the dress sticking to my back. Every step felt like I was walking through concrete. My rage from the basement was gone. It had evaporated, leaving only this vast, echoing, cold humiliation. I kept walking. Click-clack, click-clack. I kept my head down. I couldn't look at them. I could only look at the floor. Marble tile after marble tile. I could hear my mother's voice, praying for me on the phone. My daughter, a queen. I was a joke. A clown in a cheap dress and good shoes. I finally reached the small steps to the stage. I felt not real. Disconnected. I could see Emeka. He was standing by his sculptures, his face a mask of black fury. He looked like he wanted to kill someone. I saw Chidi, near the back wall, his eyes closed. He couldn't even watch. Beatrice glided over to me as I reached the top step. She grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in. Her face, to the audience, was a picture of encouragement. But up close, her eyes were dancing with pure, triumphant malice. "You look perfect, Amara," she whispered, "just for me," her voice dripping with poison. So authentic. She gave my arm a reassuring pat that was really a shove. "Don't be nervous. They love you." She walked back to the podium, a gracious hostess, leaving me alone in the center of the stage. And there it was. The piano. The 9-foot, gleaming, black concert grand. It looked like a panther, ready to tear me apart. I was a splash of garish, ugly color against its perfect, polished blackness. I walked towards it. The laughter had died down. Now it was just silence. A thick, heavy, pitying silence. The silence of an audience waiting for the charming, rustic joke to be over. I sat on the bench. It was real leather, cool and smooth. I looked at the keys. 88 of them. They looked like 100. They looked like 1,000,000. My hands were shaking so violently I couldn't even lift them. I put them in my lap, clasping them together to make them stop. I couldn't feel my fingers. I couldn't feel my toes. The rage was gone. The hope was gone. Everything was gone. There was just this terrible, hollow emptiness. I can't do this. The thought was so loud it was like a scream. I can't do this. I'm going to be sick. I'm going to run. I looked up. One last, desperate time. My eyes scanned the wings. And I saw her. Beatrice. She was standing just off stage, hidden from the audience. She was holding a champagne flute. And she was smiling. It wasn't her fake, bright smile. It wasn't her smug, patronizing smile. It was a real smile. A smile of pure, unadulterated, victorious hatred. She had won. She had taken my talent, my work, my dignity, my hope, and she had crushed them all under her expensive heel. She was looking at me, at this broken, humiliated girl in a rag, and she was happy. She slowly raised her glass to me in a mock toast. And in that second, the cold, hollow emptiness didn't just burn away. It exploded. The rage came back. Not the hot rage from the basement. This was something else. It was ice. It was steel. It was the core of the earth. She thought she had won. She thought this was the end of my story. She thought I would play my short, traditional piece and stumble off stage in tears. I took a deep breath. I unclasped my hands. They were perfectly, completely still. I lifted them, and I hovered them over the keys. I sat there, my hands shaking in my lap. The silence was a physical weight, pressing down on me. The air was thick with their pity, their secondhand embarrassment, their scorn. I was a joke. I was the punchline. I looked up. I saw Beatrice in the wings. That smile. That triumphant, hateful, victorious smile. That mock toast. She's too poor and too desperate not to. Her words echoed in my head, and in that instant, the choice became clear. It wasn't even a choice. It was a command. Stay broken or fight back. Accept her narrative, or rewrite it. Remain the rustic girl, or show them who I am. She thought this was the end. She thought I would play my short, traditional piece and stumble off stage in tears. She thought she had broken me. A new feeling washed through me, so cold and so clear it burned away every trace of fear. It was pure, unadulterated, ice-cold focus. This was no longer a performance. It was an execution. I was not going to play Fela Sound. That was the piece I had played for Mrs. Adebayo. That was the piece of my heart, the piece of my home. That was the traditional piece Beatrice had twisted into an insult. If I played that now, I would be playing her script. I would be the charming, rustic girl. No. She wanted to use my authenticity against me. She wanted to put me in a box. I was going to take her entire world, her world of European sophistication and class, and I was going to burn it to the ground. I was going to use her weapons against her, and I was going to show her what mastery really looked like. My hands, which had been shaking, were now perfectly still. I lifted them. I hovered them over the keys. I did not start with a gentle folk tune. I started with a single note, a low, thundering A-flat. I struck it with all my strength, all my humiliation, all my rage. The sound wasn't a note. It was a cannon shot. It ripped through the polite, whispering atmosphere of the room like a bullet. I saw the front row physically jolt. The man in the white jacket, the one who had laughed so loud, flinched as if he'd been slapped. The woman with the diamonds let out a small, sharp gasp. I held the note. I let the sound vibrate, deep and angry, hanging in the air. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3. The silence that followed was no longer pitying. It was stark. It was terrified. I could see Beatrice in the wings. Her smile had faltered. Her glass stopped moving. This wasn't her script. Then my right hand. It didn't play a melody. It attacked. I launched, not into a folk song, but into the single most difficult, most arrogant, most technically brutal piece I knew. I launched into the Tarantella from Liszt's Venezia e Napoli. It is not a nice piece. It is not charming. It's a piece about being bitten by a tarantula. It's about madness. It's a frantic, demonic, relentless dance. It is a showpiece designed to do one thing: intimidate. It's full of impossible, cascading runs, octave leaps that span the entire keyboard, and chords so dense they feel like they'll shatter the strings. The sound that erupted from that piano was not music. It was a declaration. It was a storm. It was all the 16-hour days, all the stolen credit, all the lies, all the condescension, all the humiliation of that cheap, ugly dress, weaponized into notes. The shift in the room was immediate. It was physical. The pity, gone. The laughter, dead. It was replaced by shock. A stunned, open-mouthed, absolute shock. They weren't looking at my dress anymore. They couldn't. They were looking at my hands. They were watching this thing, this rustic girl in a cheap Ankara rag, who was shredding a 9-foot concert grand piano. They were trying to reconcile what they were seeing with what they were hearing. The cheap dress, the world-class, ferocious, conservatory-level playing. The two things did not belong together. The box they had put me in, the box Beatrice had so carefully built, I had just shattered it into a million pieces. I played with my eyes open. I stared right at them. I stared at the man in the white jacket. His face was pale. I stared at the woman with the diamonds. Her hand was at her throat. This was my choice. This was my catalyst. This was the moment I stopped being their victim and became their problem. I saw Emika. He was standing by his sculptures. He was no longer furious. He was smiling. A huge, broad, fierce smile. He raised a clenched fist in the air. I saw Chitty. His eyes were wide open, and he was nodding, a slow, profound nod of vindication. And then, I looked into the wings. I found her. Beatrice. She was no longer smiling. She was no longer toasting. Her champagne flute was frozen, halfway to her mouth. Her face was ashen. The color had drained completely from it. She was staring at me, her eyes wide with a dawning, sickening horror. This was not her plan. This was not the rustic girl. This was a monster she had unleashed. She had spent months trying to destroy me. She had spent all night setting the stage for my humiliation. She had made one single, fatal mistake. She let me get to the piano. I was only 30 seconds into the piece, and I already owned them. I owned the room. I owned the night. I owned her. I took my foot off the pedal, letting the music hang for a microsecond. And in that tiny, split second of silence, before the next brutal cascade of notes, I looked right at Beatrice. And I smiled. My smile was a blade. I held her gaze for one more second, one more beat of the frantic, mad music. Then I turned back to the piano, and I unleashed hell. It wasn't just Liszt anymore. I segued, with a crashing, dissonant chord that made the front row jump again, straight into Rachmaninoff's third piano concerto. The Rach 3. The piece they call the Everest of piano concertos. I didn't just play the solo. I played it all. I played the orchestra part with my left hand while my right hand did the impossible, spidery runs. I became the orchestra. I became the soloist. I became the storm. I was no longer in the room. I was back in Succa, practicing on a keyboard with sticky keys. I was in my tiny Lagos room, studying until 3 a.m. I was in the archive room, crying silently while she consoled me. I was in the back of the car on that fake errand to Acadia, my hopes shriveling. I was in the basement, holding that ugly, hateful dress. I poured every second of it into the keys. The humiliation became power. The pain became precision. The rage became a terrible, brilliant, devastating art. The dress was part of it now. It was a visual shout. It was the symbol of their arrogance. They had laughed at this dress, and now this dress was beating them into submission. This shabby Nigerian girl was playing with a technique and a passion that their expensive European performers, the ones who canceled, could only dream of. I was showing them what rustic really meant. It meant raw. It meant real. It meant power. The room was no longer breathing. They were captive. They were witnesses. This wasn't a performance. It was a reckoning. I saw the man in the white jacket. He was on his feet. He wasn't laughing. He was staring, his mouth open, as if he was seeing a miracle or a ghost. I looked at Emeka. He had his phone out. He was recording. His face was a mask of pure, glorious pride. And then, I let my eyes find Mrs. Adebayo. She was in the front row, sitting perfectly upright. She was not shocked. She was not clapping. She was watching. Her face was a cold, hard mask of pure calculation. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at her daughter, who was still frozen in the wings. She was looking at Beatrice's face, which had crumpled from shock into a mask of pure, childish panic. Mrs. Adebayo looked back at me. She looked at my hands as they blurred over the keys. She looked at the cheap, dirt-stained dress. And in that second I saw it. She understood everything. She understood the lie. She understood the sabotage. She understood the dress. And she understood, with a final, crushing clarity, that her daughter hadn't just been cruel. She had been stupid. She had tried to bury a diamond, and in doing so, had just proved to the entire world that her own daughter was a worthless piece of glass. I was reaching the climax of the piece. The chords were so loud, so fast, so powerful, it felt like the piano itself was going to break. It felt like I was going to break. I was pouring the last of my soul, the last of my anger, the last of myself into this final, screaming cascade of notes. I played the final chord. It was a thundering, defiant, catastrophic crash of sound that seemed to shake the very foundations of the building. I held it, my hands, my arms, my entire body rigid. The sound died, and the silence that followed was absolute. It was the loudest thing I had ever heard. It was a vacuum. A void. 10 seconds. 20 seconds. The entire room was frozen. The man in the white jacket, the one who had laughed first, was the first one to move. He was pale. He looked undone. He didn't clap. He just said, in a voice that was clear in the stillness, "Oh my God." And then the room exploded. It wasn't applause. It was a roar. It was a physical thing, a wave of sound that hit me in the chest. Every single person was on their feet. They were not just clapping, they were shouting, "Bravo! Encore!" People were whistling. The woman with the diamond necklace was openly weeping. I had never felt anything like it. It was validation. It was vindication. It was justice. I was breathing hard, as if I'd run a marathon. My cheap dress was soaked in sweat. My hair was a mess. I was a beautiful, triumphant disaster. I stood up from the piano bench. My legs were shaking, but not from fear. From release. I turned to the audience. I looked at the sea of adoring, stunned faces. I put my hand on my chest, feeling my heart hammer against my ribs. And for the first time in my life, I took a bow. Not the small, subservient dip of an intern. It was the deep, proud, grateful bow of an artist. Of a master. The roar just got louder. I straightened up. I turned. And I walked off the stage. I walked past the podium. I walked into the shadows of the wings, away from the light, away from the noise. She was still there. Beatrice. She was backed against the wall, as if I had physically hit her. Her face was, I don't even have words for it. It was a collapsed ruin of jealousy, hatred, and pure primal fear. Her shattered champagne glass was at her feet. I didn't stop. I walked right up to her, invading her space. I stopped so close I could smell the terror coming off her in waves, mixed with her expensive perfume. She flinched. She looked like she expected me to hit her. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just looked at her. I looked at her N500 000 red designer gown. And I looked down at my N2 000 Ankara rag. I leaned in, so only she could hear me. My voice was quiet. It was cold. It was dead. "You were right, Beatrice," I whispered. "It is a traditional piece." She just stared at me, her eyes wide, uncomprehending. "It's called the Dance of the Fool," I lied. "The fool who hands her enemy a loaded gun." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. "Thank you for the dress," I said. It was perfect. So authentic. And with that, I stepped around her. I was going to go to the basement. I was going to get my bag. And I was going to leave. "Amara!" The voice was not Beatrice's. It was iron. I stopped. I turned. Mrs. Adebayo was standing right there. She had moved from the front row to the wings with the silent speed of a shark. The applause was still thundering in the main hall, but in this small, dark space, there was only a cold, deadly silence. She didn't look at me. Her eyes, her cold, black, furious eyes, were locked on her daughter. Beatrice saw her mother, and she crumbled. "Mother," she whimpered. "Mother, I didn't know. I didn't know she could." "Be quiet," Mrs. Adebayo whispered. It was not a request. It was a death sentence. "You," she said, her voice vibrating with a rage, so deep it was almost calm. "You foolish, stupid child." "Mother, please, it was just a joke." "A joke?" Mrs. Adebayo's voice was lethal. "You thought this was a joke? You didn't just try to ruin this girl, who, by the way, just saved your entire life out there. You tried to ruin me. You tried to ruin the Adebayo name. You put that on my stage." She gestured to my dress, as an act of petty, childish spite. "You showed everyone in this room, everyone who matters, that you are not just weak. You are a liability. You have no vision. You have no instinct." Beatrice was openly crying now, silent, ugly tears. I'm sorry. Get out of my sight," Mrs. Adebayo hissed. "Go home. I will deal with you later." Beatrice didn't hesitate. She fled, stumbling over the hem of her red dress, a disgraced queen, running from her own party. Then there was just me. And her. The sound of the applause was finally dying down. Mrs. Adebayo turned to me. Her face was impossible to read. It was hard. It was stone. She looked me up and down. She looked at my face, still flushed with triumph. She looked at the cheap, sweat-soaked dress. She looked at my perfect, elegant, 29,500 naira shoes. She was silent for a long time. You have fire, Amara Okeke, she said finally. Her voice was quiet. You have talent, but talent is common. Fire is rare. She stepped closer. Beatrice was right about one thing. I was looking at you. I was considering you. After tonight, there is nothing to consider. My heart stopped. I had gone too far. I had embarrassed her. I had shown her up. I was fired. You will come to my office, she commanded. Tomorrow, 7 a.m. Not the staff entrance. The front door. I don't understand, I whispered. No, you don't, she said, a flicker of something, almost a smile on her face. You're an artist. You're a fighter. You are not an intern. You are not a protege. What you are is the new director of acquisitions for this gallery. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. Chidi will draft a real contract, she continued, with a real salary and a real clothing allowance. She glanced at my dress again, this time with a look of pure disdain. We are going to burn that dress, but not tonight. Tonight, you will wear it. You will go back out there, and you will take another bow. And you will go and talk to every single client, every single billionaire in that dress. Why? I choked out. Because, she said, her eyes gleaming with a new, dangerous light. I want every single person in this room to remember what real power looks like. I want them to remember that the Adebayo Gallery doesn't deal in fluff. We deal in talent. And I want them to remember what my daughter and all of her weak, simpering friends are not. She turned to leave. Oh, and Amara. Yes, ma'am. You're no longer playing the charming touch. You're the main event. From now on, you play what you want. You find the art you want. You are in charge. I took a deep, shuddering breath. The air in the wings was cold. The air in the main hall was still electric. Go on, Mrs. Adebayo said. Her voice was flat. It was an order. I turned. I put one foot in my mother's shoe, out of the shadow and back into the light. The applause, which had been dying, surged back to life. It was deafening. I walked back to the center of the stage. I didn't go to the piano. I just stood there, in the sweat-soaked, 2,000 naira Ankara rag. And I looked at them. The man in the white jacket was in the front row, his hands red from clapping. He was looking at me, not like a joke, but like he was afraid of me. And like he wanted something. He wanted to be associated with my power. The woman with the diamond necklace, the one who had shielded her eyes, she was dabbing them with a silk handkerchief. She was looking at me with a raw, almost painful admiration. This was power. Not the power of a red dress or a platinum card. This was the power of fire, the power Mrs. Adebayo had seen. I found Emeka in the crowd. He was still recording, his grin so wide it looked like it might split his face. He pumped his fist in the air. I pumped mine right back. I took one more bow, deep and slow. Then I walked off the stage, not towards the wings, but down the front steps, directly into the crowd. It was like parting the Red Sea. People I had been serving drinks to a week ago, people who had looked through me, they stumbled back to let me pass. And then they swarmed. My dear girl, that was astonishing. Who are you? Where did you come from? My foundation, we must talk. We must sponsor you. Forget him, talk to me. I want to commission a piece. For my new home in London. They weren't looking at my dress anymore. Or rather, they were. But now it was a symbol. It was a badge of honor. It was the shabby dress of the girl who had just ripped their polite, boring world to shreds. I handled it. I don't even know how. The girl who was too scared to speak was gone. I was Amara. I was Miss Okeke. Thank you so much. If you'd like to talk, please find me tomorrow. At the gallery. I'm so glad you enjoyed it. Have you seen the new Emeka collection? It's just over there. It's the future. A pleasure to meet you. Yes, Miss Amara Okeke. I'm the new director of acquisitions. With every person I spoke to, I felt myself standing taller. I was me. The next morning, I walked up to the Adebayo Gallery at 6:55 a.m. I was wearing my own, simple, clean black dress and my mother's shoes. I walked right up to the front doors. They were locked. At 7 a.m., on the dot, Mrs. Adebayo unlocked them herself from the inside. She was dressed in a severe, perfect gray suit. She looked like she hadn't slept. "Good," she said. "You're punctual. I detest lateness." She led me to my new office. It wasn't a desk in the archive. It was a beautiful, glass-walled office next to hers. My first meeting was with her and Mr. Chitty. He slid a thick, leather-bound contract across the table. I read the salary. It was more money than my father had made in his entire life. It had a housing allowance, a car allowance, and, as promised, a professional wardrobe budget that made my eyes water. "You will sign," Mrs. Adebayo said, "and then you will get to work. That mob last night, they are now your clients. You will call every single one of them. You will sell them every piece of Emika's art. And then you will find me more." "What about?" I started to ask. I didn't even know how to finish. "Beatrice." Mrs. Adebayo's face didn't change. "Beatrice is no longer your concern. She is no longer anyone's concern. I found out later from Chitty. She hadn't been just sent home. Mrs. Adebayo had cut her off. Completely. Her credit cards. Her car. Her name was removed from the gala's press release. She was given a one-way ticket to Brussels to supervise the gallery's long-term art storage facility. A windowless warehouse. It wasn't just a firing. It was an erasure. A social and financial death. She had tried to erase me, and she had, in the end, erased herself. I never saw her again. 6 months later. It was the night of the Adebayo Gallery's mid-year New Talent exhibition. It wasn't a gala. It was my event. I had created it. It was small, intense, and exclusively for the most serious collectors. I was standing at the podium. My podium. I was wearing a custom-made gown by a brilliant new Nigerian designer. It was a deep, midnight blue silk. It was powerful. It was elegant. It was me. My hair was no longer pulled back in a severe bun. It was glorious. The room was packed. Emika, now the toast of the international art world, was standing beside me. His new collection of sculptures, they were breathtaking. He was my partner, my colleague, my best and truest friend. Mr. Chitty was by the door, not as a registrar, but as the general manager of the gallery. He beamed at me. I tapped the microphone. The room went silent. Not a pitying silence, a respectful one. "Good evening," I said, my voice clear and strong, echoing through the room. "My name is Amara Okeke, and I am the director of the Adebayo Gallery. Welcome." I gave my speech. I talked about art, about vision, about the new voices we were platforming. After, the man in the white jacket, Mr. Alakija, came up to me. "Miss Okeke," he said, bowing his head slightly. "Another triumph. The new artists are inspired. I'd like to acquire the entire collection for my new foundation." "Thank you, Mr. Alakija," I said, smiling a real warm smile. "I'm sure we can make that happen." As the night wound down, Emika and I were standing on the terrace, overlooking the lights of Lagos. "You did it, Amara," he said, his voice a low, proud rumble. He clinked his champagne glass against mine. "You really did it." "No, Emika," I said, looking at him. "We did it." He smiled. "So that dress. You ever miss it?" I laughed. "Chitty had it incinerated. Professionally. There's a certificate of destruction in a file somewhere." "Good," he laughed. "It was a terrible dress." "It was the most important dress I'll ever wear," I said, suddenly serious. I looked out at the city. My life was unrecognizable. I had a beautiful apartment overlooking the lagoon. I had my own piano, a baby grand. I had sent for my parents. They now lived in a beautiful house in Lekki. My mother, who had never seen the ocean, now walked by it every morning. My father's shaky hands were now steady because he had nothing to fear. Mrs. Adebayo, our relationship was not warm. It was iron. We respected each other. We were colleagues. We were, together, making the Adebayo Gallery the most powerful art institution in all of Africa. That was enough. I think back to that girl in the basement, the one who was so broken, the one who was starving, just starving for someone to see her. It's funny, they still try to put me in boxes. The prodigy, the Nsuka success story, the Iron Lady of Art. They still try to define me, but it doesn't matter anymore. I am not what they call me. I am not the dress I wear. I am not the praise, and I am not the insults. I am the music. The boxes don't matter when you're the one holding the key. And that is my story. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here with me, for listening, for coming on this journey. It means more than you know. I really hope this story found you well. I hope it gave you something. Maybe a little bit of hope. Maybe a little bit of fire. So what did you think? What was the moment that got you? When Beatrice handed me that dress? Or when that first note hit? Please, let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. I love hearing from you. I love knowing where you're watching from. And I love knowing what you think. If this story touched you, please, I would be so grateful if you'd click that like button. It helps so much. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. Because I have so many more stories to tell you. And trust me, this was just the beginning. Thank you for being here. Be kind to yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.